Donald Trump has been indicted in New York over a hush money payment involving adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 presidential election. Thursday's indictment makes him the first current or ex-president to be charged with a crime. Russia is reportedly looking to offer North Korea food in exchange for weapons. The U.S. says the arms deal would violate UN Security Council resolutions. World EXPO officials will arrive in South Korea next week to inspect the city of Busan as a possible venue for the 2030 hosting job. To show Korea's confidence and dedication to the global event, an exhibition is taking place in Central Seoul. Our top story this morning, former U.S. President Donald Trump has been indicted over an alleged hush money payment. A grand jury in New York voted to indict him after investigating a $130,000 payout during the 2016 election to adult film actress Stormy Daniels to keep her silent over an alleged affair. This makes Trump the first U.S. president serving or former to face criminal charges. In a statement, Trump lashed out at Democrats and President Joe Biden, calling the result political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history, with Trump seeking a return to office in 2024. The indictment comes as Trump is currently the clear frontrunner among all Republican presidential candidates. It also comes as Trump is being investigated in several other cases, including his role in the U.S. Capitol riot in 2021, his efforts to overturn the election outcome in Georgia during the 2020 election, and his handling of classified documents after leaving office. As Russia appears to be running low on ammunition for the war in Ukraine, U.S. has said Russia will likely send a delegation to North Korea and that it seeks to offer food to Pyongyang in exchange for weapons. Our Peunji has more.
The White House has revealed that Russia is seeking to acquire more munitions from North Korea to bolster its war against Ukraine. In a press briefing on Thursday U.S. local time, the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said Vladimir Putin would likely send food to the regime in exchange for munitions. Noting that they have new information that Russia is actively seeking to acquire additional munitions from North Korea, he said Moscow is also seeking to send a delegation to Pyongyang. He added that any arms deal between North Korea and Russia would violate a series of UN Security Council resolutions. On North Korea's recent statements that they will not provide or sell arms to Russia, Kirby said the U.S. is continuing to monitor the situation closely. His comments came soon after the U.S. on Thursday imposed sanctions on a Slovakian man for trying to arrange the sale of more than 24 types of North Korean weapons and munitions to Russia. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said schemes like this show that Vladimir Putin is now turning to suppliers like North Korea and Iran as a last resort. In December, Washington had previously accused Pyongyang of providing weapons to the Wagner Group, a pro-Russian mercenary outfit. Pyongyang denied the claims. Peunji, Arirang News.
Russian authorities have arrested an American reporter for the Wall Street Journal, accusing him of spying. The White House slammed Moscow for the move, calling the targeting of American citizens by the Russian government unacceptable. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
In a move that would certainly further deteriorate relations between the United States and Russia, Russian authorities on Thursday announced that it had detained Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. Russia's main security service, the FSB, said that the American journalist, who had been based in Moscow, has been trying to obtain state secrets. A Russian district court in Moscow said that he would be detained until May 29th. The arrest of Gershkovich marks the first time an American journalist has been detained by Russia over allegations of spying since the Cold War. However, the arrest also comes a week after U.S. authorities arrested a Russian national in the United States for allegedly spying. Despite speculation, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov did not say if Gershkovich's arrest was a retaliatory measure. In response to the arrest, the White House slammed Moscow, calling it unacceptable.
The State Department has also been in touch with the Wall Street Journal and his family on this matter. This espionage charges are ridiculous. The targeting of American citizens by Russian government is unacceptable. We condemn the detention of Mr. Gerskovich in the strongest terms. We also condemn the Russian government's continued targeting and repression of journalists.
The White House spokesperson also warned Americans against traveling to Russia, while also calling on any U.S. citizens living or currently visiting Russia to leave immediately. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. Department of Defense on Thursday reaffirmed its firm stance on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. That's according to Pentagon spokesperson Pat Ryder, who was asked whether the U.S. plans to deploy nuclear weapons in South Korea. Without directly answering the question, Ryder said the Pentagon will closely consult with Congress on the matter and will continue discussions with South Korea on extended deterrence. When asked whether the U.S. plans to deploy additional THAAD systems in South Korea, Ryder said there is nothing to announce on that matter. U.S. President Joe Biden has called for stricter banking regulations following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. According to the White House on Thursday, Biden proposed a set of reforms aimed at reinstating safeguards for banks with assets between $100 billion and $250 billion and bolstering supervision of financial institutions. Among the proposed reforms include raising liquidity requirements and increasing stress tests for mid-sized banks. These are largely seen as a move to bring back regulations that have been scrapped under the previous Trump administration. And with Republicans in control of the House and seen as more skeptical of regulations, the White House added the reforms will be carried out under existing law. The 2023 South Korean baseball season kicks off tomorrow, April 1st. 10 clubs in the Korea Baseball Organization will begin the new season and the battle to claim the Korean Series title. For more, we're joined by Mr. Yoo Ji-ho, a sports writer from Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. The KBO is back in full swing this year. What makes this year's edition different or stand out from the pre-pandemic era? I mean, in terms of scale and the number of fans expected at the stadium. I asked this question because some fans are reportedly quite disappointed by the poor quality shown by the Korean teams, including the ones at the World Baseball Classic.
Right, just touching upon some of the changes. I think this is the first 100% normal season since 2019. The fans were back in full capacity last year, but at the time we still had the indoor mask mandate, and that has since been lifted. So that means the one dome stadium in this league, the Kochuk Sky Dome in Seoul, the fans going to games in that stadium will no longer be required to wear a mask. So you're going to see fans in full capacity for second straight year and no mask mandate, either indoors or outdoor stadiums. So that's, I guess, one notable change. Now, you mentioned the WBC and how the national team's performance might have been a letdown for baseball fans in this country. But some of the attendance numbers in the preseason games right after the tournament were actually very encouraging. I think some of the numbers caught even clubs in the league office by a little bit of a surprise. So I don't think there's as much concern in terms of attendance figures earlier in the season as there might have been. So I think that there's some good signs that the fans are still going to show up in big numbers. The opening day is a big deal. All 10 teams in action, 2 p.m. Afternoon start on the weekend. There's a lot of excitement in many different fan bases going into this season.
That's a relief. Now, what are some of the major highlights to look out for the season in the KBO? Now, SSG Landers will try to become the first team to successfully defend a title in 7 years, and we also see some interesting managerial duels this season, right?
Right. Landers had a historic season in 2022. They spent the entire season in first place and then went on to win the Korean series. They will try to become the first team to win back-to-back titles since the Busan Bears back in 2015 and 2016. It's going to be an uphill battle for sure. There's a lot of parity in this league right now. Maybe not a lot of weak links compared to in the years past. So the Landers have the work cut off for them to win their second straight title. Now with the managers, we've got a new manager with the Busan Bears, Lee Seung-yup, one of the biggest legends in KBO history, making his managerial debut. And one of his closest friends in baseball, Park Jin-man, his former teammate with the Samsung Lions, will be managing the Samsung Lions on a full-time basis after spending second half of last year on an interim basis. So the friends, they're going to put their friendship aside for a bit, try to take their team back to the playoffs after missing out last year. So that's one managerial matchup that's going to be really interesting to watch. And also the two foreign managers in this league, Carlos Rivera for the Hanwha Eagles, Larry Sun for the Lotte Giants, two very downtrodden clubs last season, both entering the final years of their contract. So they've got to prove themselves, or their job security might be in danger.
Yeah, competition over friendship for now. And before we let you go, Jiho, this is a relatively small league compared to Major League Baseball. Now, teams here play each other 16 times per season, and familiarity with breed contempt over the course of a season. Now, what are some key rivalries to watch out for this year?
Right. I touched upon the Bears and the Lions with the managers, but also the Busan Bears have the natural rivalry with the fellow Seoul club LG Twins. The Twins, I think a lot of people are picking them to probably win the championship this year. The Bears, maybe not so much, but they're going to be going out there with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. So the Twins-Bears rivalry, I think the Bears have had an upper hand in recent years, but I think the Twins are going to try to turn the tables maybe this year.
All right, Jiho, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
There are now only a few days until the organizer of the World EXPO visits South Korea for an on-site inspection. The city of Busan is looking to host the 2030 World EXPO. With the country busy with last-minute preparations, a large-scale exhibition kicked off in capital Seoul yesterday. Our cultural correspondent Song Yu-jin takes us there.
Blue roses, the symbol of hope and aspiration, light up Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul. They're hoping that Busan, South Korea's second-largest city, becomes the venue for the 2030 World Expo, one of the three major international events along with the Olympics and the World Cup. In light of this, Gwanghwamun Square has gone through a complete makeover.
As the Bureau International d'Exposition, the organizer of the Expo, is visiting South Korea for a project examination, we planned this event to show people both at home and abroad Korea's dedication to the 2030 World Expo.
Here, you can take a look at the past and future of the World Expo. Yukjo-madang, the start of the square, tells the Expo's more than century-long history. Groundbreaking inventions like the telephone and the airplane were all introduced for the first time at past editions of the Expo. Next up, the three themes of the 2030 Busan World Expo. First, technology for humanity, like Korean motor giant Kia's new electric model, the EV9, is being showcased. Second, sustainable living with nature. You can enjoy some of SK Innovation's efforts to go green, like its fast-charging EV batteries. And a booth set up by Busan City where people can generate renewable energy by riding this bike inside. Finally, a platform for caring and sharing. Characters representing Lotte Group, Pelligom, Rotti, and Rori were there to greet visitors. There's also a wish tree filled with messages in support of Busan winning the bid. The 5-day exhibition gives some indication of Korea's ability to host the 2030 World Expo.
We were surprised because the place was packed with so many people. Just looking at this big crowd makes me confident that the 2030 World Expo is Busan's.
I'm very proud to be here seeing all these brands, and all these events are very exciting, all the photo booths, all the gifts that you're getting, and I hope Busan becomes the place for the expo.
Now, hopes are high, and the excitement towards Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo is stronger than ever. Starting from here at Gwanghwamun Square, South Korea is showing that it's ready for the BIE's upcoming on-site inspection. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
South Korea's investments into Malaysia dates back to the 1980s. Based on their long, reliable trade partnership, the two countries now seek to take more dynamic steps in economic cooperation. Our economic correspondent Lee Dae-hyun met with the Malaysian Trade Minister for details.
When many countries look to the West for their development, there is a country that turned towards the East. It's Malaysia, South Korea's third-largest ASEAN trade partner. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Malaysia's Look East policy, a strategy to seek cooperation with East Asian countries for international benchmarking.
Investments from Korea itself into Malaysia since 1983 is close to 10 billion US dollars. It's grown a lot and it's growing fast. It's important. We have been working together when it comes to investment and trade, especially in the area of E&E, electrical and engineering, semiconductor, and also petrochemicals.
The two countries are now discussing ways to expand economic cooperation in a variety of sectors, including the digital economy, climate change, and green energy.
Well, one area of cooperation, in fact, I was with my counterpart, the Korean Trade Minister, is to ensure that we have restart our discussion on bilateral FTA, right? We also talk about opportunities to have more cooperation on the digital side together with on sustainability. So some of the collaboration includes sharing of knowledge between our academics, between the academia.
With countries around the world facing a global supply chain crisis, the minister says Malaysia is looking to work with Korea by rerouting the supply chain, or what he called friendshoring.
Relocate, and people are calling it friendshoring, reshoring, right? And in fact, some countries are onshoring again. So Malaysia and a few other countries in Southeast Asia, because of our neutral stance, will be able to benefit and leverage our position both politically and geographically to get some of the supply chain to Malaysia.
Malaysia's GDP saw strong growth of 8.7% on year in 2022, the biggest rise since 2000, making the country an attractive place to invest in. South Korea sees Malaysia as an important partner in renewable energy and works together on a clean hydrogen production project. South Korea's trade ministry had also urged Malaysia to support Korean companies that invest in Malaysia's energy and EV battery sectors, while aiming to cooperate on stabilizing the bilateral supply chain. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Tommy.
Let's start in the Philippines, where search and rescue efforts are still ongoing following a deadly ferry fire.
Well, that's right. According to the latest reports, at least 31 people have been killed and 7 are missing after an inter-island ferry traveling from the Zamboanga province to Jolo, Sulu province, caught fire on Wednesday night local time. Now, the fire started with most passengers still asleep. Over 220 of the total 250 passengers were rescued, with dozens jumping into the sea in a bid to escape the flames. Now, passengers were helped by the Coast Guard and local residents of the nearby Baluk Island. The cause of the fire is still being determined, but eyewitnesses report hearing explosions both before and after the blaze started. Now, the Philippines has a record of maritime disasters due to aging vessels and overcrowding on ships. Now turning over to the U.S. state of Kentucky, where at least 9 U.S. service members have died following the crash of 2 U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopters. Now, the crash occurred near Fort Campbell in the state's southwest during a routine training exercise that involved 4 helicopters on Wednesday evening local time. Now, reports say the 2 aircraft crashed into an open field and that there were no survivors. The helicopters were medical evacuation aircraft, part of the 101st Airborne Division. The cause of the crashes is still under investigation, and it's not known whether they collided with each other. The crash marks one of the deadliest training disasters for the U.S. military in recent times. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball's regular season kicked off on Thursday with new rules introduced which are meant to speed up games and introduce more action. And included in the changes is a first for the league, as games will now feature a pitch clock. Pitchers will now only be allowed 15 seconds to throw a pitch when bases are empty and 20 seconds if a base has a runner. And staying with bases, these have been enlarged from 38.1 centimeters to 45.7 centimeters. This is to accommodate the growing size of players over the years and to encourage more base steals, as well as to reduce injuries. And finally, researchers have found that plants can make noise. According to a study published in the science journal Cell on Thursday, plants make clicking and popping sounds that are not audible to the human ear. But using a special ultrasonic microphone, researchers have been able to capture what these noises sound like across a variety of plant types. Let's take a listen. Now, the finding shakes up previously held notions that the plant kingdom was mostly silent. Researchers also found that stressed plants make about 30 to 50 sounds per hour, while unstressed plants emit about 1 sound per hour.
Good morning. It's the last day of March, but it will feel more like the middle or end of May by the afternoon. And it will be even hotter this weekend, with an expected peak going above 25 degrees Celsius in the capital. Not to mention the cherry blossoms have already reached near full bloom. And it looks to be a very crowded weekend on the roads, with the blossom attracting crowds. But when you do go out, be sure to have a face mask that can filter dust if you are in the west of central regions and Gyeongsang-do provinces. And unfortunately, it does not look any better tomorrow either. Wash hands frequently and drink plenty of water. Now, the dry weather advisory is expanding to more parts of the country, so when you are going hiking, fire safety is a must. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 3 degrees higher than yesterday, with Daejeon and Daegu topping out at 25 degrees. Gwangju will see a high of 27 degrees under sunny skies nationwide. Then much hoped for rain is in the forecast for the first week of April. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. We'll be back next week for Monday's edition at 9 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.